It was a beautiful and sunny September morning when I boarded the New York shuttle plane at Logan Airport in Boston. I was going on my very many trips to New York because we were now also in the garment business. And I had to split my time between furniture and garments and sporting goods. I was going down there to see one of our big customers who made women's and kids' coats out of our plastic. I was very familiar with the plane because I'd been down there on it so long going to New York. And because I was deaf in my left ear, I had a favorite seat up against the window so that anybody who came in and sat beside me had to sit in my good ear. Because if they sat in this ear, forget it, I would never hear them. And many times they would get upset because they thought I was stiffing them. Well, somebody was sitting in my favorite seat, which is in the lounge on the left window seat, and I looked, and the right window seat was empty. And these were two sets of two seats facing each other. I was facing the back of the plane at the window seat. Well, the way I handled it generally was to get the New York Times and stick my head in the New York Times to discourage any conversation. And I got my head in the Times, and a passenger gets on and he sits down beside me, and I hear him say good morning. So I say good morning, and I go back to the Times. The plane takes off, and after the plane took off and the seatbelt sign went off, the guy next to me gets up, moves to the empty seat opposite him, and starts talking to the guy sitting opposite me. And I thought to myself, I did it again. The guy probably tried to talk to me. I didn't hear him. Okay. Well, the plane approaches LaGuardia Airport over Jamaica Bay, and there is an embankment around that end of LaGuardia, separating it from the water. And evidently the left wing of the plane hits the embankment, the plane turns on its back and skids down the runway. We are all hanging by our seatbelts as the plane comes to a stop. And at a very specific moment, a British-voiced stewardess says, "Loosen your seatbelts and come this direction." We all went like that with our seatbelts and came down. I was lucky because I'm sitting by the window, so the hat rack is under me, but the poor bastard sitting in the aisle evidently came down on his head from ceiling to floor, from floor to ceiling, actually. But everybody got out, 88 people. And I had a cigarette lighter with my name on it that Zippo gave me. And evidently hanging upside down, it fell out of my pocket. And while people are jumping out of the plane, I'm looking around. My lighter, that's stupid. This story after this is horrible in terms of the people at LaGuardia reaction. We stood there for 20 minutes on the grass watching the plane burn, and some guy from one of the, what do you call it, came out with a garden hose. We stood there for 20 minutes before the fire engines came. Not only that, but when they took us on into the station, they were smart enough to let us use the phone. But they didn't examine us. They didn't ask if anybody needed a doctor. This poor guy next to me who had a concussion. He had to drive all the way back to Long Island. Nobody looked at him. The procedure was unbelievable. At any rate, I called your mother, who was smart enough to see I was in shock. I told her what happened. She says, "You got a $20 bill? Yeah, take it out of your pocket. Go out there and hold it out and get a cab. And go to your hotel room and call the bellhop. Take off your clothes," because I told her I was muddy where I jumped out. "Give me your clothes and have them bring up a bottle of Canadian Club and get drunk." It's exactly what I did. And she was so smart for me to do that. Anyhow, the word got around. I called. And one of my guys from New York, the salesman from New York, called me up. "Hey, Dave, you all right?" "Yeah." "Did you save the samples?" He says, "Okay." At any rate, the interesting part of this story, I think, besides the fact that we were lucky to get the hell out of there, was in a couple of weeks, I get a letter from the CAB, Civil Aeronautics Board, which doesn't exist anymore, that asked a lot of questions. One of the questions, "How many times have you taken this flight in the last 5 years?" And then on the other side, there were lines that said, "Tell in your own words what you think happened." So I filled it out, and I had excellent records, and I found that I had taken that flight 85 times in the past 5 years. So a couple months later, I get a subpoena to a CAB hearing and an FAA hearing, two separate hearings at LaGuardia. No, I'm sorry, at the other one. Now JFK, but, well, the CAB hearing was about people and the aircraft itself. The FAA is on the pilots and what their activity was. First, the CAB hearing is quasi-judicial. The people from the company sit here with the CAB guys, and they let you make a statement, then they start asking questions. The first witness at the CAB hearing is this gentleman who sat beside me. And while they asked me to attend the hearing because of frequent flyer, they asked him to attend the hearing, but asked him to come to the hearing because he filled out the other side and 31 additional pages. He was a psychiatrist. He gets up there and I want him to read what he wrote. He starts out, I approached the clerk behind the counter at Logan Airport, and he must have had a fight with his wife for bad coffee because he was not very nice. And blah, 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 blah. That's the kind of thing he wrote. He says, "I entered the plane and saw an empty seat beside a young businessman who busily engrossed in the New York Times. I said good morning. He said good morning. And then he went back into his newspaper, and the plane took off. And after the seatbelt sign went off, I felt like talking, but I didn't want to disturb the businessman reading his paper, so I took the empty seat and started a conversation with the other gentleman." So then I'm the second witness, and I said, "Gentlemen of the CAB, I want to thank you." And I tell them the story of my ear, that I can't hear, and that what I do to avoid the problem. And I said, for 3 months I've been worrying that I had stiffed this gentleman, and that thanks to you people I know this morning, I didn't. That was it. So that's the plane crash story.